During steady-state exercise, when the demand of oxygen meets the required amount, the tidal volume will stay the same. However, it increases from average to get to this point. Tidal volume increases because our breaths are deeper and greater, meaning our lungs fill up with more oxygen to provide energy for the working muscles. So during steady-state exercise, the tidal volume levels out because our lungs are filling up with the required amount of oxygen to happen for gas exchange, internal and external, from the alveoli into the blood and into the muscles to allow our muscles to work. The oxygen dislocation graph. The graph curve describes the regulation between the potential pressure of oxygen and the oxygen saturation. So the pressure is on the x-axis and the saturation is on the y-axis. The oxygen is saturated with hemoglobin to show the oxyhemoglobin graph. When hemoglobin is fully loaded with 4 oxygen molecules, it's saturated. Oxygen leaving hemoglobin is dislocation. So this graph shows the amount of hemoglobins that are in the oxygen and leaving the oxygen to provide for the working muscles. The curve shows the regulation between the oxygen available and the amount of oxygen carried by hemoglobin. This graph can move either left or right. The curve is shifted to the right by an increase in temperature or decrease in pH value. What this means is when we're exercising, our body temperature increases, meaning that the graph moves right because we're working harder and sweating out more. The opposite is when the graph shifts to the left. This means there's a decrease in our body temperature and an increase in our pH values, meaning that we are not working as hard, and during steady state it will shift right and stay at this level because we're working at the intensity where the oxygen demands is meeting the oxygen available to allow us to keep exercising. A rightward shift by definition causes a decrease of hemoglobin for oxygen, meaning there's less hemoglobin. The respiratory system linking to Mo Farah. During steady state exercise, Mo Farah's breathing rate will increase at the start of the rate, and once it levels out it will stay the same for around 20 minutes while he's running. This is because he is inhaling and exhaling the right amount of oxygen and other airs and getting rid of the amount of carbon dioxide to stop a build-up of lactic acid, to allow the oxygen to happen with gas exchange, to allow the oxygen to connect with hemoglobin in the red blood cells to provide energy for these working muscles. Also, there's an increase. Mo Farah's tidal volume will increase and its steady state will level out. This is because he is inhaling enough oxygen to fill up his lungs for gas exchange to happen, to allow this oxygen to be delivered to the working muscles to allow them to keep running at the same speed and intensity. During steady-state exercise, Mo Farah's oxygen graph, will move to the right because where he's running at a steady state, there's been an increase in body temperature to allow him to keep working at this rate and showing that he's working at a high enough intensity to keep running at this pace throughout the 20 minutes. The energy systems. The energy continuum shows how the energy systems work together to provide resynthesis for ATP. The energy systems work together and very rarely work in isolation. This means they all work together at roughly the same time to allow us to keep moving during exercise. Most sports use all these energies combined together, so when in steady state exercise, the energy systems will work together to allow you to keep working at this rate, but we won't use the lactic acid energy system because there's no rapid increase in our pace or intensity for the 8 to 10 seconds. For the 8 to 10 seconds to use this energy system. This means that during steady state exercise, Lincoln to Mo Farah, who uses ATPPC energy system, aerobic system, because he's working aerobically with oxygen due to him working at the same speed and intensity for the longer periods of time. However, the energy continuum relates to all three energy systems for resynthesis. So this graph shows the amount of energy we get from each energy system and how long it lasts. The aerobic system is made up of 3 stages. Stage 1, the aerobic glycolysis, stage 2, the Krebs cycle, and 3, the electron transport chain. The aerobic system works by using all these 3 stages to help with the resynthesis of ATP. It also helps create phosphate and the right amount of fuels to be able to exercise for longer periods of time. But this system happens slowly and for less intensity sports, low intensity sports. This means that this is good for steady state exercise because it allows the energy system to resynthesis to allow you to keep running at a steady pace for longer periods of time, because it's a slow process and good for the low intensity sports like running. In total, this process of energy systems creates 38 yields of phosphates. The aerobic glycolysis creates 2 phosphates. The Krebs cycle also creates 2, and the electron transport chain creates 34. This system can last for a long time because of the amount of phosphates that it creates to allow you to keep exercising. Stage 1, aerobic glycolysis. Okay, so firstly you start off with high levels of adenosine diphosphate in the body with the enzyme phosphofructokinase and the other enzyme glycogen phosphorylase. These enzymes then turn glycogen into glucose, which can turn into pyruvic acid by breaking down the glucose. This turns into pyruvic acid, and the pyruvic acid then creates 2 moles of phosphate. These 2 phosphates are then used for the ATP resynthesis. However, the enzyme phosphofructokinase can also create pyruvic acid, and the enzyme coenzyme A, which then turns into acetylcholine by being formed. But this only happens if oxygen is present. If oxygen isn't present and carbon dioxide is present, this is the lactic acid system, which can produce a byproduct of the lactic acid from the carbon dioxide. The Krebs cycle. During aerobic glycolysis, the aerobic system can run out of glycogen from the muscles, so fat can also be used. The lipase break down the fatty acids into acetylchoenzyme A, which enters the Krebs cycle. The Krebs cycle takes place in the mitochondria. So this acetylchoenzyme A combines with the oxaloacetic acid to create citric acid. This citric acid then feeds into the Krebs cycle, where it can produce the byproduct of CO2, which is exhaled, 2 phosphates, which are used for resynthesis of ATP, hydrogen, which is used for the next part, and it produces more oxaloacetic acid because it reproduces itself. So the electron transport chain is the third and last part of the aerobic system. This chain uses the hydrogen from the Krebs cycle to create more energy for ATP resynthesis. So the hydrogen combines with NAD and FAD, which are transport enzymes, and these enzymes then combine with hydrogen to create NADH and FADH. This then gets transported to the electron transport chain, where the hydrogen ion, which is a H+, which can create hydrogen ions, which is H2O, which is water, which gets bypassed out the body by sweat and cools you down. The electrons, the hydrogen electrons, create 34 moles of phosphate, which allow you to continuously resynthesis for ATP if the intensity of the exercise is slow. So the energy system is linked to Mo Farah. So when he's doing his 10,000 meter race, he'll mainly be using the aerobic system for resynthesis of ATP. This is because this system will work the best to allow him to keep running at a steady state and the same intensity and pace throughout the race, because each section helps create ATP, and this system is for lower intensity and longer lasting sports. These reproduction of ATP and phosphate to allow the body to constantly keep working. The neuromuscular responses. The muscle spindles. Muscle spindles are located within the skeletal muscles. They are stretch receptors that detect the change in length of movement. Muscle spindles detect the speed of the change in the muscle length. This means that when you are exercising, the change in length of muscle will happen more rapidly because you're moving faster. So during muscular contractions, these muscle spindles send information from the central nervous system via the nerve fibers, and this information can be processed to the brain to determine the movement of a muscle. In a muscular contraction, the muscle spindle has an important role by activating the motor neurons via the stretch reflex to resist the muscle stretch. During a muscular contraction, the sensory neurons detect the movement in the body. This impulse is sent to the medulla oblongata in the brain and down the spinal cord in the central nervous system. The motor neurons send this impulse from the central nervous system to the skeletal muscles that want to contract. This signal gets passed through the axon in the motor neuron, and this connects to the neuromuscular junction, meaning that the impulse gets sent down the axon to the neuromuscular junction in the muscle. The motor unit in the muscles work together to create contraction. Therefore, the muscle will be contracting. This then goes to the synaptic cleft, where there is acetylcholine. If there is enough acetylcholine, an electric charge, and muscle action potential is created. This message is sent to the muscle fibers for the muscular contraction to take place. If the motor unit receives a stimulus that is strong enough, the muscle fiber will contract at the same force, allowing the muscular contractions to happen. Golgi tendon organ is a perceptive receptor organ that detects a change in the muscle tension. This is located in the origin and insertion of skeletal muscle fibers connected to the tendon of the skeletal muscle. During muscular contraction, the tendons send information to the central nervous system. This message is sent about the strength of the muscular contraction.